Good evening and welcome along to NUFC Matters on a Tuesday. I'm always joined by Liam Kennedy from the Shields Gazette. Good evening, Liam.
Happy to be here again. Lots to talk about. It's been another busy week, hasn't it?
It has, mate, and you got an exclusive. You got an exclusive, mate. So just tell us, a little bit about that. I mean, it must be a buzz as a journalist to get that kind of story ahead of everybody else, and then see everybody else pick up on it.
No, it's always good. That's what you're in the business for. You want to get the story first. I love digging. I love finding bits and bobs out. As you'll all know, that's what I thrive on. So yeah, it was interesting. Obviously, the story has been treated with a fair bit of skepticism from people, and I would genuinely think that's the fairest point to come from. With it is just be skeptical of it. There's a few holes in the bid, but they say it's genuine. They say they're interested. So to me, it's still a story. I've said this to people on Twitter, and it's something that doesn't often translate very well, is that sometimes when I write things, I don't necessarily always believe them 100%. You can be skeptical yourself, but also still tell the story. I tried to give an example to somebody the other day on Twitter, and it's a bit like if Steve Bruce turned around and said, well, Kieran Clark's the best defender I've ever seen since Franz Beckenbauer. If he said that, I'll write it. Doesn't mean I believe what he's saying. You know what I mean? So there is it isn't an opinion piece. It is a story, and a legitimate story. And like I say, it was one that everybody else has picked up on, which is another feather in the cap. You quite enjoy that when everyone else starts chasing your own tail. But yeah, no, it was a good one. We've had a few over the last few months, so that was probably one of the better ones.
I've got to ask you what your gut instinct is on it, mate. I mean, I've spoken to Michael Chopra. You've spoken to Michael Chopra. I know you've had a few messages off him as well over the course of the last 7 days. And, there's been a lot of publicity. Obviously the Nationals are into it now, and we've seen Alan Shearer linked with the position, and just so many stories coming down. We've seen Photoshop Gate, where photographs have been photoshopped from a meet and greet with Obama to looking as if they're standing in the Oval Room with him. I mean, you couldn't really make this up, and again, it's another layer to this NUFC takeover story, which has dominated the same period of time as COVID.
Yeah, I had somebody tweet us last night with a bit of a Photoshop job, which was quite funny. You had Raoul Moat coming in one way, and then it had PJ Duncan and all sorts of Newcastle fans had some fun with it. But yeah, that's one of the holes in it. Like, really, if somebody's got so much money that they want to buy a football club, legitimate money, if that's what you want to call it, then why would you have to Photoshop a picture with Obama? Yes, some of the photo was genuine, but then putting the two cousins in on the side was just daft. And I think I knew when those photos came through on Saturday morning, it's not my skill set. I knew somebody out there would do it, would find these original pictures if they weren't real. And surely these people must know that as well. They must know that people are going to get found out. It shows a real naivety. And what I would say is, they sound very genuine. They talk a good game. Michael Chopra is doing a fantastic job in getting the media on board, pushing the story out there. He deserves a lot of credit for that, to be fair. And he says they're genuine. The group themselves say they're genuine. And we've got to take their word for it in some ways. Will it pan out? I would be very doubtful that it will, simply because if you want to deal with Mike Ashley, you probably need somebody on side who knows how to deal with Mike Ashley. And coming in with a low ball bid, wanting paid on the back of that and that kind of thing is a really difficult deal to strike with Mike Ashley. He's not going to take to that too well. And we've seen other people out there report he's just not entertaining, speaking to people who aren't hitting his targets, that won't get passed from Dentons to Mike Ashley, Justin Barnes, etc., unless he hits a certain criteria, and that's money. If they bid 320 million, I'm sure he would have found out about it straight away. But they've had to go down the media route and push it out there. Obviously, we broke the story. I think it was a little bit quicker than they wanted it to come out, and they've had to react to that. I've had a few emails, correspondence from the media guys. There's an element of unprofessionalism about them. You do get the sense that this deal's been pulled together very, very quickly. But I kind of have a feeling that they are a genuine bidder. And I do have a feeling that there's people there ready to pay for this football club. But you've still got to be really sceptical. I just think it's so far off. It's unbelievable. There's only really one bid at the table. Yes, it's not exactly on the table at the moment, but there is only one bid that can be passed if the Premier League see fit to do so. Henry Morris, I've been so dismissive of that throughout. I keep hearing little rumours here and there about this Henry Morris thing. People talking about it where financial people, etc. There could be something in it. There really could, but I like it. I mean, there could be something in it, but it's just, again, it's another one with so many holes in it. It's unbelievable.
Fantasy Island, that Luke Edwards' Fantasy Island. I really don't know where on earth that story's come from, Luke Edwards. Look, if Henry Morris buys the club, then I'll go and buy Luke Edwards a pint and I'll unblock him on Twitter. I blocked him and a couple of other journalists, and because I'm just sick of the stuff that they're putting out, and I just, it drives me up the wall seeing some of the stuff that gets written, especially when you know the relationships that these people are behind the scenes with certain people at the club. But we'll move on.
Is it not surprising how quiet some people have gone? I don't mean Luke Edwards in particular, but I mean there was some really vociferous voices out there on Twitter. Richard Keys being one of them, and there was some journalists as well that haven't heard a peep from them. You'd think if this deal was dead, as some of them think it is, you think they'll be shouting this from the rooftops. There'd be a celebration. There'd be parties. There's been nothing of the sort. Not even.
Do you want my opinion on that? The reason that they have gone quiet is because PIF, PCP, and the Rubens are still at the table. You just said to me there, it's the only credible deal in town. It's the only deal on the table. For Mike Ashley, it's probably the only deal at the table. He certainly doesn't want to take £70 million less at the moment for Newcastle United. If whatever is going on in the background collapses in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, and a deal cannot be struck between the Premier League and whoever they're talking to, then Mike Ashley's going to have to move on. But I personally think you're right. I think that's why we haven't heard from Richard Keys, and anyone connected with BN Sports has gone quiet. And for me, when you put all of that together, it looks to me very much that somebody is trying to do a deal with regards to piracy, television rights, whatever you want to call it, and this Newcastle United takeover. It would make sense if the Premier League did that. It's the one chance they've got to nip it in the bud completely, get exactly what they want, and move forward. I personally feel that's where we're at now. And, it'll be very interesting to see how it all pans out. I know, Amanda and, PCP, have tried so hard since 2017 to take this club over, put a lot of work, a lot of effort in, spent a hell of a lot of money on lawyers, and spent a hell of a lot of time trying to get this through. And, you've got to give them credit for that. The one thing that at least they can do if this doesn't work out is hold their heads up high, because they proved they're not tire kickers. And all those, in the media and some fans who called them tire kickers, in the past, really should take that back, because it's proved that they haven't been. And if, I've seen one or two journalists go, well, it just failed to buy a football club for the umpteenth time, at least she's given it a go. At least she's given it a try. She's brought the right people to the table. It's a massive deal for the club, massive deal for the area. I'll be disappointed if it doesn't go through, and I'm sure a lot of fans will echo those sentiments. But I think you're right, mate. I think that's why a lot of people have gone quiet, and interesting to see how it all pans out. But I keep feeling we're reaching an end game, but who knows? And of course, big meeting tomorrow. The Premier League, of course, have that quarterly meeting with the Trust. You interviewed me, but you interviewed Alex Hurst and a few other supporters about how they've been affected by the takeover. What was your conversation with Alex like? I mean, I read his interview. It was, as always, Alex gives a good interview. He's a nice kid, chairman of the Trust, of course, but also the editor of True Faith fanzine. What was your view on that? And I know it was probably a little bit before this meeting, so you probably don't know what kind of question he's going to ask, but how much of a part is that going to play tomorrow, do you think, the Trust going in front of the Premier League and actually getting Newcastle United's takeover on the agenda?
Well, look, it is a positive that Newcastle United is on the agenda. How much they'll be able to get out of Bush and Masters is another thing altogether. It isn't the main reason why this meeting's taking place. This meeting's taking place talking about getting fans back in football grounds. So this will be part of the agenda, and I just hope they get the opportunity to ask a lot of the questions that they've prepared and been given to ask. And if they can, I'd be surprised if Richard Masters gives any particular answers. I could imagine he'd be very similar to what he was with the parliamentary inquiry. I can imagine he'd probably just bat things away largely. But it is a positive that those questions will be asked if they're given the opportunity to do so. And I think it can only be a positive thing that Newcastle United is on that agenda. But it's a difficult one. It's a real difficult one. I think they should be doing more. I think the Premier League should be doing more than this. I think the Premier League might use this. They might use this as an excuse to turn around and say, well, look, we've spoken to supporters. What more do you want me to do? And that's still not right. It's still not enough. We need more than that. We need more than what they said on Friday. And we need more than them meeting the supporters group in a closed meeting. We need a lot more. We need more answers. We need more detailed questions. We need the buyer and the seller. They need to be replied to. The tens of MPs who haven't had a proper reply, they need reply to as well. This cannot be swept under the carpet, nor should it be. I think the Premier League are being very dismissive of Newcastle United fans, MPs, the Prime Minister, supporters, everything. And I think they should show a little bit more respect. I don't think tomorrow really will bring a lot of answers. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to receive that email saying, right, check your tweet, check your emails. And I'd love to read my emails and it be a very detailed breakdown of everything that's gone wrong and why and the delays and how things can move forward constructively. But I genuinely don't believe that'll be the case. I don't know about your thoughts, Steve.
No, I think you're right, mate. Look, we're getting a lot of comments about PIF should come out and say something. Just let's nip that in the bud. They're not going to come out and say something. I think it's very quiet for a reason. I think there's negotiations, there's something going on in the background. I think that's where we're at. I think if there's an end game and if Amanda Staveley and co is pulled out, we'll hear from them 100%. But I'd take that as a positive. With regards to the Trust and the Premier League, look, it's a great opportunity for the Trust to use one of their quarterly meetings to get this on the agenda. I think they've done well to get it on there. Like you rightly said at the start, this isn't something that they have managed to pull off. It's one of their set meetings that they get, in the quarter. I don't think they'll get a great deal of time to talk. I believe Alex will condense a lot of points and try and get them all across, maybe 4 or 5 questions if he's lucky. But good luck to him. I don't know the content of the questions. I haven't spoke to Alex today, but I'm sure that they'll put across the fans' beliefs that this takeover should go through, and they'll essentially say that, from our perspective, they had a poll of its members. I think it was something like 96.7% said they wanted the Saudi takeover. They'll say that it's going to be good for the city. And I suppose the last questions as to why the Premier League have stood in the way of this deal going through, So, good luck to them. I don't expect a great deal. I think it'll be a talk and shop, which, very rarely results in getting anything out. It's not actually about anything other than, project restart, fans going back to grounds and that kind of thing. So they'll not want to get bogged down in Newcastle takeover. But what I'd like to think is that some of the questions that maybe don't get asked will show, that the fans are a lot wiser up here than he probably thinks, Richard Masters, that the fans know a lot more than, than Richard Masters thinks. And it might just be another alarm bell that rattles the Premier League. And from their perspective, they might think a little bit more about, how they go about, the next part of the process. But yeah, I think, a lot of people asking about the petition and about the letters to MPs. There's no doubt that's worked. I think it's taken it to a different level. I get the feeling that the silence is also down to the fact that, that this is at a higher level, Liam. I think that, the politicians were certainly getting involved. I've seen countless replies and I've seen countless letters from MPs that they've sent to the Premier League. And, I personally feel at that kind of level is, where we were asked to direct our attention. And I think that's massively helped. And I just, I still believe the takeover will go through. I haven't been as active on Twitter, and I'm not answering questions and putting 100% and all of that, because we've moved on from that. It's not really in the owners and directors stage anymore. We're at a different level, and it's a level that nobody's really getting any information about. And I'm still confident it'll go through. I just think there's going to be a deal of some kind to get this deal, through and the club to be bought.
It's in a place that no takeover has ever been before. It's like you mentioned. you mentioned a higher level there. It's been in the owners and directors. They couldn't make a decision on that. It's almost had to go to a different level that isn't in the legislation effectively for the Premier League. This is uncharted waters for everybody. So for me, I can't say with any degree of certainty whether it will or won't. But you'd like to think there's been compromises throughout this. There's been working together. You'd like to think that they could come up with some kind of deal. I have no idea what that deal could look like. But you'd think it wouldn't be as dead as some people seem to think it is. And I know compromise is something you mentioned earlier in the week. I put a story out today. Compromise. It's what has to be done if everyone's to move forward. The Premier League sort of put themselves in a bit of a corner. They're getting attacked from all angles. And as you said, the pressure from the fans has been incredible. I see a lot of people out there losing heart, and it's only understandable that people lose heart, having put so much effort in. But it's okay to look back on this and say you've made a difference. It's 100% you've made a difference. I've been speaking to people today that are doing a load of different things behind the scenes, and it all works. Every little bit of pressure, every little bit of angle, it can be worked by any fan, no matter what you're doing. Whether it's, I know the legal guys have took some criticism, they're doing certain bits. The petition was fantastic. It's still growing, very slowly, but it's still growing. This can only work. People are still writing to MPs. We're seeing the likes of Nick Brown just put that reply in today.
Brilliant letter.
Yeah, it was. Because it didn't allow the Premier League to rest on their laurels, really. It didn't allow them to just sit there and say, right, well, that was okay on Friday. And that letter pushed it home again that, no, we need more. We do need more than what was said on Friday. So, yeah I'm hopeful. I have no idea on timeframes. We've just got to kind of accept as a fan base that we're going to have Mike Ashley in the short term. The medium term, who knows? The long term, he'll be gone. He will be gone because he wants gone. He doesn't want to be spending any more time at St James's Park. He doesn't want to be sitting there watching any games. We've seen it over the last few years. He's went to less and less and less. He does not want to be there. He wants to be buying. It could be anybody. He wants to be buying, using that 300 million to plug his gaps in his business and then start expanding again on the high street. That's what his game is, and that's what he wants. And he's had enough in Newcastle United. So short term, we're stuck with him, probably. Long term, he'll be gone. Medium term, that's what we've got to aim for now. It could be the end of the season. I don't know. It might be halfway through the season. It might be in 2 months' time. Who knows? But I think he'll be gone long term. But we've just got to hope it's the Saudis. That's what people want. And going back to the trust, I'm an advocate of the trust. I think it's a fantastic movement.
Oh, so am I.
But I've got a but. There is a caveat to this. You mentioned it. The 96% of people want this takeover. They don't want regulatory change for the Premier League. Mm-hmm. They don't want any of that. They want this takeover. And that's the battle that's got to be fought tomorrow. The battle lines are there. Use it. Go at the Premier League and say they want this takeover. We don't want your owners and directors test changed. This, that, and the other. Yes, of course, you want a fair, level playing field. But by the same token, if it was an unfair playing field and this got put through, Newcastle fans wouldn't care about the owners and directors test and how it was conducted. No. So let's just be honest. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say that Newcastle United fans effectively don't want regulatory change, although that would be beneficial to everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that. They want this takeover because they've been sold a dream and they don't want to give it up. That's effectively the way I see it.
Yeah, Rick Astley said, never going to give you up. And of course, me and Dad did tweet that. A lot of people mentioning that tonight. Here's a good one from Ian. He says, what would you lads ask the Premier League if you were in the meeting tomorrow?
Where'd you start? I'll let you start, Steve.
I'll tell you what I would be interested in knowing. And this is something which you might be able to, throw some light on because journalists do talk. I don't think you broke the story. But if we go back to the heady days of April, right, when COVID was in its full throes, and the news broke about the company's house change. Was it mid-April when we got the notification from somebody in the press that there was no red flags?
Yeah, there was no red flags. So yeah, they come from George though.
So that, right, okay. So if there's a story comes out from the press, whoever did it, whether it was George or whoever, and if the club, I think the story was that the club was informed by the league that there were no red flags, and that was early April. So that's after the paperwork was submitted. My question would be to the Premier League, is that true? Were assurances made? And if they were made, what changed after that?
Yeah.
That would be my that would be my question. That would be my question to Richard Masters, because if a story comes out with quite clear wording, no red flags, that's not something you make up as a journalist. That's something that's come from somewhere at the Premier League. So for me, that is a clear indication, especially with the Premier League knowing that the PIF, the Public Investment Fund, are involved in this takeover. Then what changed? Because the Premier League were always aware from the start, because it's there on the paperwork, that 80% of this deal was funded by the Public Investment Fund. So what changed? What has changed? I would also ask them, and this is another one which I would ask them, is have you at any time during this process been contacted by anybody representing BN Sports?
Well, I want disclosure in some ways in that sense, because I kind of want to know. I want to know who has influenced this decision, because there was a very, very clear change in approach midway through this process, which caused the impasse, which then caused the pullout. I want to know who influenced that. I want to know about this New York Times story as well, with regards the basically the top 2 veto, top 6 veto, whatever it may be. Is this really something that exists? Of course, it's not going to be written down in a constitution, but I want to see, was there contact? Were you briefing BN Sports? It seems as though BN Sports actually had a fair hand in this. Which is that really right? Is that legal? Is that do the Premier League consult their sponsors on who owns one of their football clubs? I don't really think that's written down anywhere, but I suppose it's subjective. They can use their rules and tests and bend them whichever way they please, which isn't right. You put a test down, and the people who went forward with it thought they were going to pass because they believe they ticked all the boxes. They still to this day believe they've ticked all the boxes required. I want to know from the Premier League. My question now, not thinking back on what's gone, is are you willing to work with these people to get some kind of decision made? Doesn't even have to be a deal passed. Are you willing, if they come back to the table, to work on compromises, at least to get you to the point where you can say yes or no? And then we can deal with it the way you've dealt with every single other takeover that's been presented on your table. You've either said yes or no. You've never not made a decision. I want you to make a decision, and I would want to know, are you willing to sit down and talk with them all? I mentioned today the lines of communication are there, but are you willing to sit down with them all and talk and say, right, can we work this out? If not, if what you've presented with was so far, if that's all you've got to present, the Premier League should be able to say no. If it doesn't satisfy their tests, say no. That's fine. That's all I want to know. But they have to make a decision. I want to know if they're going to make, if they're willing to sit down, talk it through, and make a decision, because that would be best for everybody. This hanging on and not knowing, and that's probably the worst bit about all of this, because, and I think that's why some of the anger, I can see why fans are diverting their anger towards the buyers or buyers in waiting, is because they almost kind of wish that deal had stayed on and the Premier League had made a decision. Now we know, I don't think they would have made a decision. I think they've tried to kick this to the long grass in every way, shape or form they possibly could. But I think some people are angry at the buyers for saying, well, why didn't you just leave it with them? They would have made a decision or way any further forward. Now, I'm not of that mindset. I think this has really kicked things into action. I think it's had the opposite effect of what some people think it has. It's more live today and last week than it was maybe for 6 or 7 weeks when it was just an impasse. It's more live now than it was then, because stuff's actually happening. Action is taking place. Talks are going on. So yeah, I think I'd like to know from them direct. Are you willing to budge? Are you willing to do something, or is this your final standpoint? And if it's your final standpoint, surely the buyers put the thing back on the table and say, right, well, go on, then reject it. Reject the bid if you want to. And then that's when the legals get involved, and that's when it could get tasty.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. Look, there's so many questions. I mean, this is the problem. It's not a meeting about Newcastle United's takeover tomorrow. It's such a, it's a meeting about something completely different. And the trust has managed to get this onto the agenda. But I mean, there's so many questions you'd want to ask Richard Masters in particular. About broadcast rights. I mean, essentially they don't have any bearing upon the approval process. The Premier League's owners and directors test. So there's that many things you'd want to ask. But of course, the other thing is as well, even if you went in with a scroll of 20 questions, there is absolutely no guarantee that Richard Masters is going to answer any of these questions. And, he can just say, well, that's something I'm not willing to go into, you know what I mean? And it's, like I said, it's a good achievement to get it on the agenda. Do I think it'll have any, major play, in the whole process? No, I don't. I've seen a few people talking there about, that KSA are busy, are trying to sort piracy issues out. Yeah, I do believe that is the key. I still, I didn't believe it a few weeks back that was the reason that we were going to have issues. I thought it was down to the fact that they felt, that you would have MBS running the club or something like that. But it's, the more and the longer it drives on, it really does look as if this is more about the piracy and BN Sports, etc. And, I think once you get that issue sorted to the point where the Premier League are actually happy with it, I think you'll probably have a conversation where, the Premier League are spoken to, and they will then speak to, Mike Ashley. Mike Ashley will then say, right, it's all sorted. Let's get this show on the road. And I think that's where we'll be.
Yeah, I agree. I think it will. I think we'll get an answer out of this. I think something will happen. It'll not be the case of this will just sort of fade away. I think we will get something, but again, time frames on that are just impossible to say, aren't they?
Yeah, no, they definitely are, mate. They definitely are. But we'll watch with interest and see what kind of results the supporters trust get. A lot of people asking, I'm sorry I can't get through all the questions. Last night, people were saying we'll put the questions on the screen too quickly. It's because I try to get everyone's point across. But I know you can, those of you watching on YouTube, get a chance to watch in the comments section anyway. So I'm probably going to start just selecting the odd questions so that you can read them and leave them on the screen. And we'll try to get to everybody's points. A lot of people asking about transfers. A lot of people saying, is this the longest medical in history? Is Hendricks actually having a medical? Is he just fell asleep in there? What's actually going on? Is he actually here? I mean, what's going on? And please tell us there's some other people lined up for Steve Bruce's training sessions.
Yeah, well, it's a deal that's very, very close, as per reports elsewhere. I can't give any detail on the actual medical, to be honest, but he's been all the squad were back in this week. They had the holidays for a couple of weeks, and they're all back in. And Hendrick is one that we've talked about on here before. He's a really solid signing for me, anyway. He's not going to pull up any trees. He's not going to, but he's a type of squad player with good English Premier League experience, and that seems to be the route that the scouting teams are going down this summer. It seems like they're going to have to get a little bit creative in the market, but I don't think they're going to be the only club that has to do that. They're definitely targeting, Steve Bruce's targets are definitely not of the Alan St. Maximin, Joe Linton type. They're very much in the English Premier League experience, solid. I think he's after a little bit more physicality in the side, which at times that they lack. Hendrick will give you a little bit of that. But I think they're definitely looking for a centre forward, at least one, another winger. The left back one's an interesting prospect because I've seen reports in Germany over the last few days about Jethro Willems. Now he's a player that lockdown in some ways has allowed him to get fitter and fitter. And probably if the summer had been back when it was meant to be, he would have been nowhere near signing. Now I'm not sure if there's been any contact. But I know he's a player that Steve Bruce rated very highly, and it would be a surprise if they didn't go in for him, considering he's probably going to get released from his contract. If somebody comes in for him at Frankfurt, they'll probably just allow him to leave to get his wages off the wage bill, and I think Newcastle United could do much worse. Any
info on Chris Wood? Mutt Murphy was asking, is there any legs in that story, do you think?
It's interesting with Burnley because they seem quite open to selling some of their better players. Now, Chris Wood, if you ask me, is he a type of player that would fit in Newcastle? I'll be honest, when he was in the Championship, even though he scored goals, I wasn't actually his biggest fan. But since he's stepped up to the top division, he is a fantastic centre forward in terms of physical, strong. If you put him in that Newcastle team, he'd make a massive difference in holding the ball up. He scores goals. He's a nuisance. He always causes Newcastle problems. They've got a couple of them there. Ashley Barnes always does that against Newcastle. There's a few players at Burnley that you'd probably take as short-term fixes. But Chris Wood, a fantastic player. I think 13 million sounds a bit cheap, but that could be reflective on what the situation's like at Burnley financially.
Lee Charnley, is he on holiday according to Mad Mag Mark?
That's not one. That's not one I actually know. No, I don't. I'm not sure at all if he's away.
He's got a mobile phone, one would presume, but I mentioned on the show last night that, the problem with Lee Charnley is it appears he only does one deal at a time, and that's how a lot of these deals actually go missing and out the door, and we miss out on players, you know what I mean? Because he can only seem to do one thing at a time. So, let's hope he's back soon.
Steve Bruce has been to Portugal, I think, again this summer. He does a lot of his deals on the golf courses in Portugal. I know when he was at Aston Villa, he took John Terry there. I remember I've got a story from years back that Jack Colback was away with his family when Steve Bruce might have been manager of Aston Villa at the time, and he just got a knock on the door, and Steve Bruce was at the door, and he was saying, "Do you want to sign for us?" It's the type of thing that he does. So it wouldn't surprise us if he's been on the phone quite a bit on that golf course. Because, like I say, I'm sure John Terry signed because he met him on the golf course, and that was how they did the deal. So it wouldn't surprise him. Maybe Jeff Hendrick's a good golfer, and he's been in Portugal as well, and that's how they've got that one done.
They must do a good kebab with bacon out in Portugal. That's what he's gone out there for. Classic. Yeah. Anyway, I want to ask you about this one. I noticed you haven't had the exclusive on it, but please tell us this is true. Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, he's signing, I think.
Well, apparently this is all down to Shopra's BN Bellegraph Nova group claims of a £280 million bid after it's enlisted. That was after it then listed the help of Alan Shearer. I mean, that why on earth? I mean, hold on, it's the Telegraph. Is that Luke Edwards? No, it's not. It's Ben Rumsby, whoever Ben is. I think he's been on the rum. But yeah, I mean, that's just ludicrous, isn't it? Putting a story out like that, for God's sake.
Do you know what? When I read that story yesterday, it got flagged up to us. I thought I'd seen this Bella Nova's bit. I'd seen their Twitter account, and they'd been talking about we want to make contact with Cristiano Ronaldo. So as soon as I seen that, I thought, has somebody on the wind up here, and they've written that, having seen that they've obviously had contact with him in the past. I don't know. I can't say that. I can't vouch for who wrote it or why. But it's a load of rubbish, isn't it? Absolute rubbish. And if that's the type of media approach that this group have got, then they're so wide of the mark. It's unbelievable. All right, Alan Shearer, mention Alan Shearer. Yeah, that'll get the fans on side. Oh, they'll sign Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, people aren't that daft. And if they think people are that daft, then they're not the type of owners that we want at our football club, are they?
Nicholas says the Bellegraph Nova group claims they have a new partner on board, Mr. Ramen on Westgate Road near the motorbike shops. Remember that advert used to be on Metro Radio? I think you've got to be of a certain age to remember that. But he can replace any zip for just £1. I remember that advert. It was brilliant, that, Nick. Cheers for that. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to take it seriously at the minute, but, according to Michael, it's a serious bid, and, we'll see what happens. Maybe they meant the Brazilian Ronaldo, says Martin Colley. Mupp's disappointed. He says, you're telling me I can change my Mbappe Toon shirt for a Ronaldo one? Dear me, how it is crazy. Sam says, don't even want Ronaldo as mad as it sounds. I want a good training ground, a good manager, and fans to be reunited. Peter Davison, only players can get more money elsewhere will sign for a club with no ambition. That's bringing this back to a little bit of reality there. Colour Code says, can the buyers and sellers ask the Premier League any of the questions that they just went over, and would they answer them? I mean, the only person that can speak to the Champions League is essentially Mike Ashley, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. That's the line of communication. It's got to go through Mike Ashley. He's one of the 20 stakeholders. He owns one of the 20 shareholders of the Premier League, effectively. So he's the one who's got to communicate, which is why we've always said in here for the last few weeks, very much the ball is in the court of Mike Ashley. He's been ready. He's had his legal teams ready since they're off. And I'm sure that's an avenue that he's exploring at the moment, given recent developments.
Michael Hurst says, any news on Matty Longstaff?
No, it's a very quiet one, actually. It's not something that the club want him to stay. The manager's desperate for him to stay. I think the player's justified in feeling a little bit unloved. I think the way his career was dealt, the second half of the season in particular, yes, he got his chance under Steve Bruce, but he was very, very poorly managed after that. Considering the performances that he put in, never ever let himself down. He never looked at Matty Longstaff and said, "Oh, he's a young lad. You maybe need to take him out now because he had too many games and maybe struggled a little bit." He never did. He never got the opportunity. And when we did see him, he was sprightly. He was full of. He was tenacious. He was just a good little footballer who really would love to see him grow in a black and white shirt. And I think the thing is, he wants to stay at Newcastle United. I think that's very clear, because if he'd wanted to go elsewhere, as has been painted by some people, he would already have signed a contract with somebody, and he'd already have signed for them, because his Newcastle contract's been up nearly a week, if not longer, actually. So you'd think he would already have signed for somebody. He wants to play for Newcastle United, and he wants to sign. But whether they can come to any kind of agreement is another thing altogether.
Yeah, I mean, it's a one that seems it's going to run and run, and I just think essentially he will. I think he'll stay at the club. I do think he'll stay. NUF Spain says, any truth in Richie being part of a duo swap deal for Wilson? It always seems under Rafa Ran, now under Steve Bruce, that these stories always seem to come up about Richie, but we've always managed to keep a hold of him. Any truth in Richie being used as part of a deal? I'd heard Richie and Gale, I think, was the one doing the rounds yesterday.
I mean, we're at a point of I'm going to call it summer. We're nearly out of the summer, but we're at a point where it is transfer silly season. You're going to see links left, right, and centre to every player going. And what I mentioned earlier was Newcastle United are going to have to get a little bit creative, and that would be an example of where they would be using their budget relatively well. Matt Ritchie only recently, you've got to remember, signed a new contract. He is a player valued by the club. He's a player valued by the manager, and I don't think he's a player who Steve Bruce would give up willingly. But if he knew he could get a Callum Wilson out the back of it, then I'm pretty sure Matt Ritchie would be part of that. And I'm sure he wouldn't be against going back down to the South Coast, because he had such a good time down there, not only with Bournemouth, but with Portsmouth before that as well.
Yeah, Nicholas again makes a good suggestion. You'd love to see Ashley give the food bank and People's Kitchen a bit of the 17 million he's got for now. Lots of sightings of Ronaldo. Someone seen him on the Town Moor. Local heroes just seen him on the Metro. So hopefully this Ronaldo story will build, and I'm sure one of our tabloid journalists will run that story. Why on earth would the Premier League not accept a letter of assurance from the Saudi royal court that the state won't be running the club? It baffles me. Yeah, that was an interesting thing that came out when you were in a tent somewhere in the Lake District, mate. You chose the wrong weekend to go away. It all kicked off on Friday. Keith Downey's getting exclusives from the buyers, exclusives from the sellers. But I found that massively, massively interesting that they'd actually gone to the highest possible person in Saudi Arabia to write a letter to the Premier League, which was delivered to them, hand delivered, I believe. And essentially, the Premier League's question was answered, yet they still were being obstinate and standing in the way of this deal. So crazy, wasn't it, to hear that?
It is crazy, and it's something that I get the idea that they can't unpick the two. I get that because MBS is the chairman, but he doesn't. I don't think he makes all the decisions in PIF. I think Steve Hasty makes the point. I think he probably made it on Friday night with you as well. That Crown Estates, etc. The Queen doesn't make decisions on everything. You know what I mean? And I think it's really difficult if they're given assurances from the highest possible body. It's also understandable that PIF and the Saudi state are sitting there going, well, what more do you want us to do? How can we satisfy it? If they've done all that they can, then there needs to be compromise. Compromise is the key word here. It's an astonishing situation that we'll find ourselves in, that a government can't satisfy a regulatory body who has a test which runs for 2 weeks at some points, which is a very basic test when you read it. Are you a criminal? No. Have you been involved in any financial issues? No. It's a basic test. The Premier League have went beyond their remit. It's their test. Effectively, they can do what the hell they want with it, but they've gone beyond their remit in this test, and they've really pushed it to try and answer questions. I think Richard Masters has got a big part to play in this as well. He wasn't the first, second, third, fourth choice for that job, and I think he's really tried to make a name for himself here. I think he's really tried to push home, look, I'll fix this problem. And I think he's got in too deep. I think he's really got into a situation where they can't get themselves out of it now. You can see that they're squirming. It's taken them so long to say something. I'm even actually surprised they said anything on Friday. And what they did say was nothing. They never said anything that we didn't know. They didn't answer the questions that we all have. and they didn't address it to the right people. Effectively, they don't even have to answer to the fans, but what they should be answering to is the people who are buying and selling this football club, give them proper answers. And you mentioned Keith Downey there. One of the things that he said was, people close to Ashley are saying, so if you get the information you say you haven't got, are you going to be able to progress with this test? That's a very simple question. And that should be something that Mike actually should not be having to ask that question. That's an embarrassment, really. He should be informed on this every step of the way, and he hasn't been. We know he hasn't been. He's been left in the dark as much as everyone else. That's ridiculous. And that's why, I suppose we'll go back to the point that the battle the Trust are fighting for. Essentially, somebody else should be looking at this. Somebody else should be looking at this from the outside in and saying, right, independent body, saying, you're not doing this test right. What are you actually testing for here? Are you making it up as you go along? Because that's certainly what it feels like. And that's where disclosure comes in. If we can get some kind of disclosure on who had impact on this decision-making or lack of it, then I think we'd feel a lot better for it.
No, I agree, mate. Yeah, I definitely agree. The Chronicle's running a story tonight as well. And again, this points to what we were saying right at the top of the show, that we believe that, the piracy issue is now probably come to the forefront. And this is the talks, I suppose, that are going on in the background. And this is why there's silence. The Saudi Arabia Authority for Intellectual Property have signed a joint work program with the General Commission for Audiovisual Media as the kingdom attempts to tackle piracy. So again, another move by the Saudis to clamp down on the piracy issue. So that's in the Chronicle, only a couple of hours ago. So essentially, it's another move. It's another positive, we believe, and that's why we feel maybe there's still a chance really with PIF. Paul Hill, let's take it on a different direction. Liam, he's asking about Almiron. He's been here for a year and a half. Do you think he should be doing more apart from smiling? Look, he does smile a lot. There's nothing wrong with being happy at work, although a lot of people, don't understand why. He'd be happy at work. But there was flashes of some brilliance from him last season, I felt. And I just think he got bruised again. He was another player that got bruised in the second half of the season, that didn't play to his strengths.
From December onwards, I would put Almiron, and this might be a controversial view, I'd put Almiron in one of the top 3 or 4 players in the Newcastle United squad in terms of performance, as he scored a lot of goals. He actually did. He scored 78 goals. And when you think of a team that nobody scored any goals, it was quite a decent return, obviously, include FA Cup and that. I like the smiling about him. I like to see a lad out there. He plays like what we used to play like on the playground, where you're laughing and carrying on and happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with a player smiling. Yes, I get it. Sometimes you look at him and go, come on, you just missed a chance and you got a big, sort of Cheshire cat grin on your face. But at the end of the day, I don't see any problem with that. And I actually think he's not got much of an end product. He started scoring the odd goals and getting the odd assist, but he's not a great finisher. He hasn't really got a cross on him or a sleight of pass or whatever. But I think he's decent. And I think for us, I think he's a decent player. I think he adds energy. I think this team lost a lot of energy when Jose Perez left last summer, because he was really the glue that held the midfield and attack together. Because a lot of the work, I think Jose Perez only became loved towards the end of his Newcastle United time. People only started really appreciating what he did. You spoke to Rafa quite a bit, I did too. And he was one player that was the first name on the team sheet for Benitez, because he knew he was an intelligent footballer. He could fill gaps. He could play him anywhere and he would have done a good job for him, because he was full of energy. He was clever. He was good at closing down. And I think Almiron in some ways has had to take on the mantle of that in this team. He's not a Jose Perez. He's not the same player. But I think he does add something, and I think probably with better players around him, you would think Almiron is a real asset to this team because of his pace, because of his ability to take it from A to B very, very quickly. He closes down, he hassles, he harries. I quite like him. But I'll be honest, you're right, towards the end of the season, I think a lot of players chuck the towel in. That's not being critical of them, by the way, too much. But once Newcastle had ran that race, they really did drop off, and that showed towards the season. And Almiron was really, really one of those. He was anonymous for probably 4 out of the last 5 games. He may as well have not have been on the pitch. But I think you could say that with a few others as well. So I'm not going to be too critical. But like I say, I think with better players around him, I think he could be a real asset.
I think he would have progressed massively under Rafa, playing alongside Rondon and Perez. But of course, we'll never know that. David Tyson, he says, have any of you guys seen the 29-page dossier from BN? I know you've had plenty of documents and contact from Chopra throughout the last 5 or 6 days, mate. I mean, what kind of stuff you had? I know you can't go into too much, but is it, does it look positive? What's your views?
So we've been sent a lot of literature from the bidders, effectively, and yeah, it's skepticism. I've said this throughout. You just treat it with skepticism. We've seen the photo gate. I wasn't amazingly impressed by the documents and literature that I was sent. A lot of it makes a lot of sense, and if it's all 100% true and kosher, then you would say they could potentially be very, very good owners for Newcastle United. But again, for me, I'm just really skeptical because you get a good feeling about these things, and I do think they're real people, even though the pictures don't look great. I think they're real people. I think Michael Chopra is good intention. I think he wants this deal. He's trying to be the savior in Newcastle United. He's seen the deal collapse, and he came in himself and said, "Well, I'm going to try and fix this and bring people to the table." You know what? He's done that. But do I think they'll follow through with an acceptable bid in Mike Ashley's eyes? I'm not sure they will. They say they will, but we've heard this before. We've seen people come and go throughout the 13 years of Mike Ashley, where they've said they've promised the world and never really delivered. We've seen. You can get that picture up again if you want, but Henry Morris was the other one. He said 300. I remember, and there might be some people get a bit hot under the collar about this, but there were people printing. He bid 350 million. There he is again. 350 million people are saying. They said he has bid 350 million. This isn't about suggesting he was going to put that bid in. There's not been any 350 million bid. There's not even been a bid. So we've just got to always be skeptical of these people. They say they've bid. It's not up to standard. They need to come back with more. And if they do come back with more and Mike Ashley accepts, then we'll really start taking them seriously, because that was when we started taking PIF seriously, and we started taking... This first came up in January. Everyone got really excited. I remember it was the Oxford game. It was that Saturday in the FA Cup. Everyone got really excited. Then it died off for a little while. And then it was only in April again when it came around, when the bid had been accepted, the Premier League were doing their tests. And I think we'll have to treat all bids like that. The only time we should really get excited about these kind of things is when we know the Premier League are back in action. Although now we know it's not going to take them, no matter what bid this is. If there's another takeover in the Premier League and it goes through in 2 weeks, I think we've got a fair right to feel pretty aggrieved. Oh God, honestly, Frank, you couldn't make it summer, could you?
No, you couldn't. Frank Clark says, is this part of the reason why Chopra has been keeping away from the channel? Yes, it is, Frank. He obviously can't say a great deal. So, he will come back on, he says, at some point, but not at the moment. GK says, does Liam believe that Ashley or PCP will take legal action against the Premier League if all else fails? I suppose a lot of it depends on whether, the deal's actually been taken completely off the table, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. They've suggested that legal action could be a course that is taken, and it wouldn't surprise us if you went down that route. But without really knowing, and this is the really difficult thing, you can't second guess this without knowing all of the detail. We don't know all of the detail. We only know the little bits and bobs, and then we join the dots effectively. And without being really party to that, I know there are fans trying to take legal action. There's been talk of Mike Ashley taking legal action. I think it'll be very difficult for the bidders to take legal action. Very difficult at this stage, because how do you go against somebody who hasn't made a decision? They haven't said no. It might be difficult, but they could also point to parts of the test and say, well, you haven't actually done this correctly. You've asked us for things. You've asked us to provide the impossible, which is one thing that was suggested. And that may be a route for legal action. But again, without knowing the actual detail, it's really impossible to say, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. Has Liam heard of any progress and talks regarding a third season of Sunderland and Trust? We all need a bit of comedy in our life. Any news on that? Is there going to be another series?
Yeah, I'm starring in it.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Doing what? With a Newcastle top on?
we got you in as well.
Yeah, but with a new owner, because a pal of mine, William Story, imagine if he takes the club over. I'll have some right laughs with that. I really will. So you've not heard anything about that then?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think there is one. No, I think I tweeted about that a few weeks ago when Stuart Donald had his wobble. I think I said it's a shame that the Netflix cameras aren't there, but they give all a laugh. But no, I don't actually think there is. No, I think they've binned it off.
Well, with fans not being allowed in the ground, it'll look a bit busier anyway if they do some footage of the games. So that'll be interesting.
Sunderland fans again for this, yeah.
They're all having a go at us because I put a post on Twitter at the weekend without checking the emojis that I put on. So I got about 90% of the grief from Sunderland fans. It's one of them things, you know. I get on with a lot of Mackems, you know, who I've grown up with, etc. But obviously, you know, when we play each other, you can't stand each other. The build up to the derbies are an absolute nightmare. But I mean, those things are a distant past now. You know, I'm not sure we'll ever see a derby again. Shadow82 says, are the Trust allowed to ask whatever they want, or are they already being told to ask certain questions of Masters? Our understanding, me and Liam were talking about this pre-show, and you know, it's a meeting. We've already mentioned at the start. It's a meeting which is one of the 4 a year that they get with the Premier League. They've done well to get it on the agenda. You know, our understanding is they've put some questions together, but it's not a meeting about this. It's a general meeting, isn't it, Liam? So you know, they will be able to submit questions, but it's more like a talking shop. I'm not 100% sure what they'll come out with.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody needs to bear in mind, that if they get anything out of this meeting tomorrow, and it's a really good thing that they are getting to talk to these people that we've all been talking about for so long personally, but if they get anything, it's got to be an added bonus. They can only continue to apply the pressure, as we all are, and that's what we've just got to continue doing. We've just got to hope that we can get the decision we want, because I was one of those people. I was one of that 96%. I'm a member of the Trust. I was one of those that voted saying I want this takeover because I do. I really do. I think a lot of you guys probably watching out there will feel exactly the same as me. That's because I want Newcastle United to be the strongest Newcastle United it can possibly be. I want the city to be the strongest it possibly can be. I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of who I support and what I am. So I want Newcastle United strong, and whatever that takes, that I'm happy to go along with that.
Just a question from me, Bentaleb. Prices dropped, 4.5 million. It seems like Newcastle seem to be sniffing round him. Is that something which you think could get done?
You know what? It wouldn't surprise us if it did, because there's a number of different reasons why it might not happen, and one of them would be that he was on significant wages. Were he to come in Newcastle on his Schalke wages, he would be one of the top 2 or 3 earners at the football club. That's an incredible thing. He's cheap, but he would have to take a massive wage cut, because I couldn't see him coming on. He was on between 80 and 90 grand a week at Schalke. That's incredible money. For a player who's shown what exactly? He hasn't shown anything to me in a black and white shirt. You would see it taken for free. You'd probably rather have a kid from the reserves playing ahead of him, to be honest. But I know there's a caveat to this, as in I think Steve Bruce quite liked him. I do think Steve Bruce quite liked him. It's not one I've heard, but it seems to be one that's doing the round in the German papers. Fingers crossed they don't.
Yeah,
because I don't think he's good enough. I think there's certain games like the Man City game, etc., that showed what he is, because he played against Bournemouth a bit and he was excellent. You see flashes, you're like, oh wait there, actually that's what he can bring to this team. And then he plays against Man City and he's pathetic. He just gives up. It was like a surrender. So yeah, I would steer well clear. Will Steve Bruce steer well clear? And will the hierarchy steer well clear? Because he was a player that had been watching for quite some time. He's one of these signs. We've all seen them. They got Willems eventually. They got Bentaleb eventually. These are the type of players they want, and they continue watching them throughout. And if they're given the opportunity to sign Bentaleb for a really small price, it wouldn't surprise if they did. But the wages would probably be the main block, I would say.
Yeah, plenty of abuse coming in for the Bentaleb being suggested, and no wonder. Nobody really wants Bentaleb at the club by the looks of it. Mark says, no, please, not another duck egg. Ginger Hoskins says, no chance, he's a waste of a number. Nettle Warrior, go to that question there on the screen, mate. Serious question, Liam. Does nobody hold the press to account these days for deliberately misleading readers, or is it left to self-regulate? It's a journalistic question. I can't answer that, mate. What's your view on that?
interested to know if you feel like I've misled you. Honestly, come back in with another comment. We'll talk it through. But no, I don't think. I like to think I come from a standpoint where I would never deliberately mislead. Like I said earlier, everything I write I don't believe, but everything I write is genuine and it is a story. It's not made up. It's not done to antagonize or lead people down the garden path. I can't say for certain whether everyone else has that same moral standpoint as me. I think it's quite clear that they don't. Some people get kicks in some ways out of antagonising fans. I didn't mention any names. No, I didn't.
I didn't.
But no, if you write something deliberately misleading, that there is a chance you could end up in court. There's also you could be put up. There's regulatory bodies you could be put up against and be told to explain your actions and what you've written. But beyond that, no, there isn't really. It's your choice, really, what you put on Twitter. It's your choice the way you write. As long as it's within legal parameters, then you can kind of get away with as much as you want. Really, it's different in sports. It's different sports and news. News, you have to be very matter of fact. You have to be able to prove a number of different things to get something in print. Sport. It was first described to me when I first came in the industry. It was like where the toy shop at the back, and it is a bit of that. There is a little bit of that
yeah.
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't quite have to be proven as much. There are some people out there pride themselves. I'll go to 5 sources before I write anything. I think they're telling fibs, to be honest. I think very few people would source something so much as that. But maybe some people are out there. That just paints me in a really bad light, doesn't it?
Last 4 or 5 minutes, guys. Please hit the like button. Just hit the thumb. It helps us a lot with subscribers, and please give it a share. And if you're a new viewer, we always say this. Please subscribe to the channel. There's always plenty of content on. At the minute, we do 7 days a week. Usually 1-hour shows and a couple of 2-hour shows as well. Couple of other player-related questions. Chris Smalling, just quickly, any truth in that? A lot of rumours about Chris Smalling. Is that a serious option? Do we really need him?
I think he'd be a really solid signing, to be honest, but it wouldn't be the first position you would look at. He all looked certain to go to Roma. A couple of weeks ago, but that doesn't really seem to have. I don't know whether the change of ownership's had some kind of impact on that deal over there, because we've been linked to the guy who used to own them, James Palotta, etc., and that's been bought by another American consortium, I'm led to believe. So yeah, I think it's a player that it really fits the bill in terms of the type of player that was put on. Steve Bruce put a list together of certain players. We've seen others mentioned. Callum Wilson, you've said, Joshua King, Tom Davies, I've seen mentioned over the weekend. These are the type of players that've got real solid Premier League experience. Are Newcastle United going to sign any of them? I would probably stick my neck on the line and say no. I think we'll probably be more looking in the free loan market. There is money there to spend. I'm not saying there isn't, but I think they'll probably have to be quite cute, quite clever in the way that they do things.
I saw B made this question. We'll come back to that a little bit closer to the season when we start looking ahead to the season, mate. But thanks for your question. Bizwajit, he says, Newcastle United gone back in for Sumer. Liam, have we gone back in for him?
He's another one of these players that they constantly chase. I think depending on the situation in France with regards money, I think he's probably a player that, because of circumstances, gone outside of Newcastle United's remit in terms of cash. But you never know. You can never say never.
Yeah, well, you can't, mate. Right, just before we finish, give a little bit of plugs. I'm going to watch Dunstan tonight, again, behind closed doors. We've got Berkeley at home. We're supposed to be away, so I'm nipping out to see that match now. Another live game of football. It's amazing what a buzz you get just from going to see a live game. I just hope we get a better result than we did at the weekend. Give a little plug to what else you do, mate.
So yeah, like I always come on here and say, like, journalism costs. We don't get it for free. You don't get it for free. You've had it for free for a long time, but unfortunately, the way the world is now, it's not going to be that way. We do multi-time podcasts. We do Newcastle United stories. We've been on the front foot in the takeover throughout this process. And if you guys can subscribe to Shields Gazette, I don't mean the paper. You can still get subscriptions, but just online. You get 5 free articles, and after the 5th article, you have to pay in. I think that's not bad. It's £1 per month for the first 2 months. So if you guys can support me and support my fellow journalists at the Shields Gazette, Sunderland Echo, Hartlepool Mail, we all do a fantastic job. We're always ahead of the curve on these kind of things, I think, as we've proven time and time again this summer. So please come on and support. Give myself a follow at Liam J. Kennedy 23, at Mouth of the Time Pod, and just keep in touch. I love answering your questions. Keep bringing them my way, DMs, or just tweeting us. Even if I can't give you an answer, I'll always try and reply. So yeah, you guys just keep keeping in touch. I really enjoy the process.
Great stuff. Tom Dixon, we don't know when fans are allowed back in. I know Malcolm James is one of the chairmen who's leading a campaign and, you know, to try and get fans back in. He's joined a lot of non-league fans. It's ridiculous. That Bill Burnett will give you the last question. Liam, did you get any of Key's deleted tweets? I think you did, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. To be honest, it was like Newcastle United fans assemble. As soon as I said that on here, I didn't think I'd get much of a response. And then I've got to say, it was incredible. There must have been about 40 or 50 people that sent the same things constantly. So yeah, I do. It was interesting to see that. What have you got to hide? Why has he been covering his tracks? We've mentioned it earlier in the show. He's been a very, very quiet man recently. So yeah, if you've got nothing to hide, Richard, come out and say something.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks for all your nice comments. It's always good to get positivity. I love doing the show with Liam. Me and him are good pals, and you know, it's always good to have a journalist give an unbalanced view, unbiased view. And he's, you know, as I say, it's always good to have. We might extend the show. We're talking about it. We might knock it up to 90 minutes next week if we're both available to do so. So, Liam, thanks as always, mate. Hope. God knows where we'll be. There'll be more twists and turns over the course of the next 7 days. Please give the broadcast a like and please give it a share. And as I said, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Liam, take care, mate. See you next week.
A pleasure as always.
Cheers, mate.